The Diary of a CEO, The 33 Laws of Business and Life, by Steven Bartlett. Introduction. Imagine waking up, not in your bed, but surrounded by wreckage, thousands of feet up a frozen mountain. 48 hours have passed, and you've been unconscious. The biting cold is the first thing you feel, then the silence. The silence of a world that doesn't know you're here. Of the 45 people on your flight, only 29 survived the crash. There's no way to call for help. No way to even know where you are. This was the reality for Fernando Parrado in 1972, when his rugby team's plane crashed in the Andes Mountains. On the first day, he recalls, he slowly sucked the chocolate off a single peanut. On the second day, he sucked on that same peanut for hours, allowing himself only a tiny nibble. By the third day, it was gone. And so was all the food. A week later, after hearing on a small radio that the search had been called off, he and his fellow survivors made an unthinkable decision to stay alive. 2 months into this nightmare, Nando made another decision. He would not stay. He would walk out of the mountains, or he would die trying. He had no mountaineering experience. He was starving. But he said something that has stayed with me for years: the only way you go forward is because you can't go back. Now, you might be wondering, what does a horrific plane crash in the Andes have to do with business and life? Well, everything. Because the principles of survival, of perseverance, of mindset, are the same whether you're fighting for your life on a frozen peak or fighting for your dream in a crowded marketplace. This is the world that today's author, Steven Bartlett, explores in his powerful book, The Diary of a CEO, The 33 Laws of Business and Life. Steven is a fascinating figure. A university dropout who, from a bedroom in a rough part of Manchester, built a marketing empire that would eventually be valued at hundreds of millions of dollars. He became the youngest ever investor on the hit TV show Dragon's Den and now hosts one of the world's most successful podcasts, interviewing the most brilliant minds of our time. He's seen success and failure from every angle. And through it all, both in his own journey and in the hundreds of interviews he's conducted, he's uncovered a set of timeless, fundamental laws. This isn't a book about fleeting business strategies that change with the seasons. This is a book about the permanent stuff. The deep, psychological truths that govern why some people build great things and become great themselves, while others falter. So, for the next little while, I want you to forget everything you think you know about success. We're going to journey through these 33 laws, not as a checklist, but as a story about how to master your inner world, how to tell a story that moves people, how to build a philosophy that guides you, and how to assemble a team that can change the world. By the end of our time together, you'll understand that the secrets to an extraordinary life aren't secrets at all. They're laws, waiting for you to follow them. Book summary. So where does this journey to greatness begin? If you listen to most of the world, it begins with a brilliant idea, a lucky break, or a perfect plan. But Steven Bartlett argues that it starts somewhere much closer to home. It starts with you. As Leonardo da Vinci once said, one can have no smaller or greater mastery than mastery of oneself. This is the first and most important pillar, the self. Imagine your potential in life is represented by 5 empty buckets. These buckets are everything. The fullness of these buckets determines how big your dreams can be, and how believable they are to you and to the world. Every successful person Bartlett has ever met or studied has 5 brimming buckets. What are they? The first is what you know, your knowledge. The second is what you can do, your skills. The third is who you know, your network. The fourth is what you have, your resources, like money. And the fifth is what the world thinks of you, your reputation. Now, here is the secret. These buckets must be filled in the right order. We start by acquiring knowledge, perhaps in school or by reading. When we apply that knowledge, it becomes a skill. Once you have knowledge and skills, you become valuable to other people, and your network naturally begins to grow. When you have knowledge, skills, and a network, you gain access to resources. And finally, when you have all four of those, you will inevitably earn a reputation. An investment in that first bucket, knowledge, is the highest yielding investment you can ever make. It cascades down and fills all the others. But our ego often gets in the way. It tempts us to skip the hard work. It tells us to take the job with the fancy title, reputation, or the bigger paycheck, resources, even if we don't have the knowledge or skills to back it up. Bartlett tells a story of a talented 21-year-old employee named Richard who was offered a CEO position at another company. It came with double the pay and a move to New York City. It was a huge jump. Bartlett couldn't believe it was real, but it was. A month later, Richard was the CEO of a fast-growing startup in the Big Apple. But the story doesn't end there. 18 months later, the company had collapsed. Richard had skipped the first two buckets. He had the title and the money, but not the deep foundation of knowledge and skills to sustain it. He built his house on sand. A professional earthquake, like a new technology disrupting your industry or your company going under, can take away your network, your resources, and even your reputation. But there are two buckets it can never empty: what you know and what you can do. Those are yours forever. They are your foundation. So, how do you fill those first two buckets faster than anyone else? This brings us to a simple, powerful law. To master it, you must create an obligation to teach it. Think about that for a moment. When Bartlett was just 14, he had to give a speech at a school awards night. He walked on stage, looked at the crowd, and completely froze. His hands were so sweaty and shaky he couldn't even read the paper in front of him. He mumbled a few words and ran off, humiliated. That was his rock bottom with public speaking. 10 years later, he's on stage 50 weeks a year, headlining alongside Barack Obama in front of tens of thousands of people. What changed? He made a promise to himself. Every single day, at 7 p.m., he would write down a single idea and share it online as a tweet or a video. That daily obligation forced him to learn, to simplify, and to articulate his thoughts. It made him a better thinker, writer, and speaker. The spiritual leader Yogi Bhajan once said, "If you want to learn something, read about it. If you want to understand something, write about it. If you want to master something, teach it." By creating a social contract with his small audience, he had something to lose: their attention, his reputation. This is what's known as having skin in the game. It raises the stakes. If you want to learn about a company, buy a few shares of its stock. You'll suddenly pay a lot more attention. If you want to get fit, start a WhatsApp group with friends where you share your daily workout. The fear of losing face is a powerful motivator. Scientists call this loss aversion. Our desire to avoid losses is stronger than our desire to pursue gains. This process also forces you to simplify. To fit an idea into a tweet, you have to distill it to its essence. This is often called the Feynman technique, after the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman, who had a gift for explaining complex ideas in simple terms. He once said, "If you can't explain it to a freshman, you don't really understand it." The steps are simple. Learn the topic. Then, try to teach it to a child using simple words. Share it publicly, on a blog, on stage, even at the dinner table. And finally, review the feedback. Did people get it? If not, you've got more learning to do. This is the path to mastery. But mastering yourself isn't just about what you know. It's about how you interact with the world, how you handle conflict, and how you change minds. And that leads us to a law that sounds completely wrong at first: you must never disagree. Think about the last argument you had. With a parent, a friend, a partner. Did it end with one person saying, "You know what? You're right, I was wrong"? Almost never. When we start a sentence with "I disagree" or "you're wrong," something fascinating happens in the other person's brain. It shuts down. Neuroscientist Taylor Sherratt conducted an experiment where she put pairs of people in brain scanners and had them make financial judgments. When they agreed, their brains lit up. They were open, receptive, and more confident. But the moment they disagreed, their brains went dark. They literally stopped listening. The stronger your argument, the more evidence you have, the more they shut down. It's a defense mechanism. This is why arguing about politics or climate change with someone on the opposite side feels like talking to a brick wall. The facts don't matter once the brain is closed for business. So what do you do instead? You find common ground. You start with what you do agree on. "I can see why you feel that way," or "That's an interesting point, and I agree with you that." By starting from a place of agreement, you keep their brain lit up and receptive. Only then can you gently introduce your own perspective. The goal isn't to win the argument, it's to be heard. And you can't be heard if the listener's brain has already hung up on you. Our words should be bridges to understanding, not barriers to connection. This idea of influencing others brings us to one of the deepest truths in the book. You do not get to choose what you believe. This sounds disempowering, but stick with me. Imagine a terrorist is holding someone you love at gunpoint. He says, "If you don't genuinely believe, right now, that I'm Jesus Christ, I will pull the trigger." Could you do it? You could lie. You could say the words. But could you, in your heart, truly make yourself believe it? No. Not even to save a life. This reveals a profound secret about our minds. Our beliefs aren't choices, they are conclusions based on evidence we've collected throughout our lives. You don't still believe in Santa Claus, do you? Not because you chose to stop, but because you encountered overwhelming evidence to the contrary. The evidence doesn't even have to be true. It just has to be convincing to us. This is why some people believe the Earth is flat, or that aliens are sending messages through crop circles. They have their own evidence, and their own trusted sources. So, if you can't choose your beliefs, how can you ever change them, or change someone else's? You don't attack their existing beliefs. That's like trying to knock down a fortress with a feather. It only makes them defend it more fiercely. Instead, you have to introduce new evidence. If the terrorist holding your loved one hostage suddenly turned a glass of water into wine, would that change your belief? For most people, yes. That's powerful, first-party evidence. We believe what we see with our own eyes. This is especially true for our beliefs about ourselves. If you were bullied as a child and believe you're not confident, repeating affirmations in the mirror won't work. The evidence of your past is too strong. To change that belief, you need new, compelling evidence. You have to step out of your comfort zone and into what Bartlett calls the growth zone. You have to give that speech, even if you're terrified. When you get a little bit of positive feedback, that's new evidence. Do it again, and you get more. Over time, the new evidence becomes stronger than the old, and your belief about yourself begins to change. This is how Steven went from being the terrified 14-year-old on stage to a confident global speaker. He didn't just think his way into a new belief, he acted his way into it. He collected new evidence, one speech at a time. The most important journey is the one from your comfort zone to your growth zone, because that's where all the new evidence lives. Once you start mastering yourself and your beliefs, you need a philosophy to guide your actions. And this brings us to the second pillar, the story. This is about how you communicate your value to the world. And the first law here is wonderfully strange. Useless absurdity will define you more than useful practicalities. When Bartlett started his marketing company, He was a 20-year-old kid with more money than experience. Before he even bought desks for his 10 employees, he spent a huge chunk of his investment on a giant blue slide with a ball pit at the bottom in the middle of their office. It was immature. It was ridiculous. It was barely ever used. And it was the single best marketing decision he ever made. Why? Because nobody talks about a company with sensible desks and efficient lighting. But everyone talks about the company with a giant blue slide. The BBC, Forbes, they all came to do stories on his company, and the headline photo was almost always the slide. The slide screamed, "This company is different. This company is young. This company is disruptive." It told their entire story without saying a word. Think about Tesla. Their advertising budget is zero. Yet they're one of the best-selling car companies in the world. Why? Because their cars have a bioweapon defense mode, a karaoke function, and even a fart mode that makes sounds come from any passenger seat. It's absurd. It's useless. And it gets everyone talking. The most absurd thing about you says everything about you. This leads to the next law of storytelling: avoid wallpaper at all costs. Our brains are wired for survival, which means they are incredibly good at tuning out anything that is familiar, repetitive, or unimportant. This is a phenomenon called habituation. It's why you can be in a room with a humming refrigerator and, after a few minutes, you don't even hear it anymore. Your brain has labeled it as wallpaper and is saving its precious attention for new, potentially important information. In marketing and communication, anything that sounds like what everyone else is saying is wallpaper. Please like and subscribe. Wallpaper. Unbeatable prices. Wallpaper. Revolutionary technology. Wallpaper. Your brain just glides right over it. When Bartlett's podcast on YouTube was struggling to get subscribers, he was using the standard "please like and subscribe" line. It did nothing. Then he changed it. He started his videos by saying, 74% of you that watch this channel frequently do not subscribe. That's specific. It's surprising. It bypasses the brain's habituation filter. Then he added, if you've ever enjoyed our videos, please could you do me a favor and hit the subscribe button? It helps this channel more than you know. The result? His subscriber rate increased by a staggering 430%. He stopped being wallpaper. To be heard in a noisy world, you have to be unexpected, unusual, and unsaturated. And sometimes, to get that attention, you must piss people off. The founder of the billion-dollar skincare brand Dermalogica, Jane Vuruand, has a simple marketing philosophy. We have to be prepared to piss off 80% or we'll never turn on 20%. If you try to be for everyone, you end up being for no one. You become mediocre, palatable, forgettable. A brand triggers an emotional response. Indifference, when people don't love you or hate you, is the least profitable outcome. If some people hate you, it's a sign that some people will love you. You've made them feel something. You are not wallpaper. Once you have their attention, you have to deliver value. But value is a funny thing. It's often more about perception than reality. This is the world of psychological moonshots. A psychological moonshot is a relatively small, inexpensive investment that drastically improves the perception of something. Bartlett's hairdresser has a trick. At the end of every haircut, he does a little routine. He turns off the clippers, takes a long pause, walks around the chair inspecting the hair, and then pretends to make one tiny, final snip. It does nothing to the hair. But it does everything for the customer's perception. It signals attention to detail, perfectionism. One day, he forgot to do it, and Bartlett immediately felt like the haircut was rushed and incomplete, even though it was perfect and took the exact same amount of time. Uber is a master of this. When you're waiting for a taxi, The worst part isn't the wait itself, it's the uncertainty. Is it coming? When? Uber didn't just make taxis faster. They put a little moving car on a map. This is a psychological moonshot. It gives you something to watch, avoiding what scientists call idleness aversion. It provides transparency, and it reduces your anxiety. It doesn't make the car arrive any faster, but it makes the wait feel 100 times better. It's almost always cheaper, easier, and more effective to invest in perception than in reality. Domino's Pizza Tracker did the same thing. People didn't necessarily want faster pizza. They wanted less uncertainty about their pizza. Sometimes, the best way to increase perceived value is to do the opposite of what seems logical. Sometimes, friction can create value. In the 1950s, General Mills launched a cake mix. All you had to do was add water. It was foolproof. And it failed. They hired psychologists to figure out why. The conclusion? It was too easy. The bakers felt guilty, like they were cheating. They weren't contributing enough. So what did General Mills do? They took the powdered egg out of the mix and printed on the box, "Just add an egg." They added a step. They added friction. And sales soared. That little bit of effort made the baker feel like they had actually baked a cake. This is why some high-end restaurants will bring you a raw steak and a hot stone to cook it on yourself. It's more work for you, but it increases your satisfaction. You cooked it just the way you like it. You were involved. You weren't idle. The context, the story, the feeling, these things matter more than the objective reality. This leads to another crucial law of storytelling. The frame matters more than the picture. Imagine a world-renowned violinist, Joshua Bell, playing a multi-million-dollar Stradivarius violin. In a concert hall, people will pay hundreds of dollars to hear him. But what happens if you take the exact same musician, with the exact same violin, playing the exact same beautiful music, and put him in a Washington, D.C. subway station during rush hour? This experiment was actually done. Thousands of people walked by. Only 7 stopped to listen for more than a minute. He made about $52. The picture, the music, was the same. But the frame had changed. And when the frame changes, the perceived value collapses. This is why Apple stores are designed to look like art galleries, not cluttered electronic shops. They give each product space, signaling its value. It's why Whoop, the health wearable, intentionally does not have a screen that tells the time. Adding that feature would change the frame from an elite health device to just another watch, and its perceived value would drop. What you say is not all that you say. The context in which your message exists is everything. Now we arrive at the third pillar, the philosophy. This is about the mental models, the core beliefs, that guide the actions of great people and great organizations. And it starts with a simple, powerful idea. You must sweat the small stuff. We're often told, don't sweat the small stuff. But in the world of high performance, the opposite is true. The easiest way to do big things is by obsessing over the small things. Bartlett's podcast, The Diary of a CEO, became the most downloaded in the UK. Not because he's necessarily the best interviewer or has the most famous guests, but because his team obsesses over thousands of tiny details. They research a guest's favorite music and play it softly when they arrive. They've determined the optimal room temperature for a conversation. They use AI to test thumbnails and titles weeks in advance. This philosophy has a name, Kaizen. It's a Japanese term for continuous improvement. It's the philosophy that turned Toyota into the world's leading automaker. Kaizen isn't about big revolutionary leaps. It's about making small things better, in small ways, every single day. Toyota implements a staggering 1 million new ideas each year, most of them tiny suggestions from factory floor workers. like lowering a shelf to make tools easier to reach. The power of this is in compounding. A 1% improvement each day doesn't feel like much. But over a year, it results in becoming 37 times better. Conversely, getting 1% worse each day for a year leaves you with almost nothing. The outcomes of our small, daily choices are invisible in the short term, so we often neglect them. But over the long term, they determine everything. Not brushing your teeth today has no visible impact. Not brushing them for 5 years will have you in a dentist chair in agony. The problem didn't start in year 5, it started today. This connects directly to the next law: a small miss now creates a big miss later. In aviation, there's something called the 1 in 60 rule. If a plane is off course by just 1 degree, for every 60 miles it flies, it will miss its destination by 1 mile. A tiny deviation, amplified over time and distance, results in you ending up somewhere you never intended to be. This is true for our careers, our health, and our relationships. Relationship psychologist John Gottman found that the single biggest predictor of divorce is the presence of contempt, subtle acts of disrespect and disregard. It's that 1 degree deviation. Over time, it sends the relationship to a completely different destination. This is why having regular, weekly check-ins with your partner, your team, or even yourself is so crucial. It's not about preventing problems. It's about making tiny course corrections, 1 degree at a time, before they become big misses. To stay on course, you need a different relationship with failure. Most of us are taught to avoid failure at all costs. But the most innovative companies and people do the opposite. You must outfail the competition. The legendary president of IBM, Thomas J. Watson, said it best: if you want to increase your success rate, double your failure rate. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's a stepping stone to it. Failure is feedback. Feedback is knowledge. And knowledge is power. Therefore, failure gives you power. Booking.com, the world's largest hotel booking site, started with a basic product and a culture of relentless experimentation. They run 1,000 experiments at any given moment. Most of them fail. But the few that succeed pay for all the failures and keep them ahead of the competition. Jeff Bezos at Amazon thinks the same way. He says, failure and invention are inseparable twins. To invent, you have to experiment, and if you know in advance that it's going to work, it's not an experiment. He distinguishes between 2 types of decisions. Type 1 decisions are one-way doors. They are consequential and irreversible, like selling the company. These must be made slowly and carefully. But most decisions are Type 2 decisions. They are two-way doors. They are reversible. If you make a mistake, you can go back. These decisions should be made quickly. The biggest cost isn't failing, it's the wasted time of indecision. That's time you could have spent failing your way to the right answer. This mindset, of being all in and willing to risk failure, is captured in another powerful law: you must become a thinker. Remember Nando Parrado in the Andes? His only way forward was because he couldn't go back. There was no plan B. This might sound reckless, but recent research shows something astonishing. The mere act of making a backup plan can hinder your performance and make you less driven to achieve your primary goal. Why? Because it lowers the stakes. It removes the motivating power of fear. When you have a safety net, you're less likely to put every ounce of your being into making that first leap. Now, this doesn't mean being reckless. It's about committing fully to a path once you've chosen it, and not letting the comfort of a plan B distract from the hard work needed for Plan A. But what happens when Plan A gets tough? When the pressure mounts? That's when you must remember, you must make pressure your privilege. The great tennis champion Billie Jean King, who won 39 Grand Slam titles, was once asked how she dealt with the immense pressure of the world's expectations. She replied, Pressure is a privilege. It only comes to those who earn it. Pressure is an external force. Stress is our internal response to it. And here's a life-changing discovery. It's not the stress that harms us, but our belief that stress is harmful. A study of 30,000 adults found that people who experienced a lot of stress and believed it was bad for them had a 43% increased risk of dying. But the people who experienced a lot of stress but didn't view it as harmful, they had the lowest risk of death of anyone in the study. When you feel your heart pounding and your breath quickening, don't interpret it as anxiety. Reframe it. See it as your body energizing you, preparing you for the challenge ahead. This simple mindset shift can literally change your cardiovascular response to be healthier, more like what you experience in moments of joy and courage. The most meaningful challenges in your life, building a business, raising a child, climbing a mountain, will all come with a few cold, dark nights. That pressure is a sign that you're on the right path. Finally, we arrive at the fourth pillar, the team. Because no one builds anything great alone. And the first rule of team building is simple. Ask who, not how. When we face a challenge, our default question is, how can I do this? But the greatest founders ask a different question. Who is the best person that can do this for me? Richard Branson, the founder of the Virgin Empire, is dyslexic and admits he didn't understand the difference between net and gross profit until he was 50. But he knew it didn't matter. He said, "I'm just good with people. I surround myself with really good people." That's the thing with being dyslexic. I had no choice but to delegate. Your job as a leader isn't to have all the skills. It's to find and assemble the people who do. Every company is, at its core, a recruitment company. Your success will be determined by the sum total of the talent you bring together. How do you bind those people together? You create a cult mentality. Now, this sounds dark, but hear me out. Peter Thiel, the co-founder of PayPal, said, "The best startups might be considered slightly less extreme kinds of cults. The difference is that cults are fanatically wrong about something important. A successful startup is fanatically right about something those outside it have missed. It's about creating a tribe of like-minded people, fiercely devoted to a shared mission. This is especially true in the beginning. The first 10 hires define your company's DNA forever. If the culture is strong, new people will become like the culture. If the culture is weak, the culture will become like the new people. To protect that culture, you need a clear framework for who belongs on the team. Bartlett offers a simple one he calls the 3 bars for building great teams. For any employee, ask yourself one question. If everyone in this organization had the same cultural values, attitude, and level of talent as this person, would the average bar be raised, maintained, or lowered? It's a clarifying question. Bar lowerers, no matter how talented, are toxic. They need to go. Bar maintainers are fine. But you build a great company with bar raisers. You promote them, you empower them, and you build the culture around them. The legendary football manager Sir Alex Ferguson was a master of this. He was known for selling star players at the peak of their careers, like David Beckham, the moment he felt they were becoming bigger than the club and threatening the team's culture. He knew that no single player was more important than the integrity of the team. Once you have your team of bar raisers, how do you lead them? Here we find the most counterintuitive law of all. You must be an inconsistent leader. Every leadership book preaches consistency. Treat everyone the same. Be fair. But the greatest managers, like Sir Alex Ferguson, do the exact opposite. He knew that to get the best out of a team of unique individuals, you can't have a one-size-fits-all approach. You have to be a different shape for every person. One player might need the tough love hairdryer treatment. Another might need a compassionate arm around the shoulder. A great leader is an emotional chameleon, adapting their style to unlock the potential in each person. It's not about being unfair. It's about being effective. To do this, you have to know your people, their fears, their dreams, their motivations. When you're in the business of leading people, emotional management is everything. And to keep those people motivated, you must leverage the power of progress. What's the single most powerful motivator at work? It's not recognition. It's not pay. It's not incentives. It's simply the feeling of making progress in meaningful work. Even a small win. When people feel like they're moving forward, their emotions are positive and their drive is at its peak. This is the secret behind the marginal gains philosophy that transformed British cycling from a laughingstock into a global powerhouse. They stopped focusing on the distant goal of winning medals and started obsessing over making tiny, 1% improvements every day. That constant feeling of small progress created an unstoppable momentum. As a leader, your job is to create an environment where small wins are possible, visible, and celebrated. Set clear goals, give people autonomy, remove friction, and then broadcast their progress. When people feel like they're on a bus that's going somewhere, they're happy to be on the ride. Commentary. As we step back and look at these 33 laws, a beautiful, cohesive picture begins to emerge. Success, it turns out, is not a lottery ticket. It's not a single, brilliant idea that strikes like lightning. It is a system. It's a set of interconnected principles, rooted deeply in human psychology, that can be learned and applied by anyone. What I find so powerful about Steven Bartlett's work is its honesty. He strips away the myths and the glamour and gets to the raw, uncomfortable truths. The truth that your success starts and ends with your own self-mastery. The truth that much of what we call value is just perception, a story we tell ourselves. The truth that failure isn't something to be avoided, but something to be pursued. The central thread that ties all these laws together is a profound understanding of human nature. We are not the rational, logical beings we like to think we are. We are emotional, biased, and driven by ancient survival instincts. We ignore the familiar, we are drawn to the absurd, we overvalue what we own, and we are powerfully motivated by the feeling of progress. Acknowledging this isn't a weakness, it's a superpower. The greatest leaders, marketers, and builders don't fight against human nature, they work with it. If there's one lesson to take from this entire book, it's this: the world inside you creates the world outside you. Your self-story determines your actions. Your philosophy determines your decisions. Your relationship with discomfort determines your growth. Before you can build a great company, lead a great team, or tell a great story, you must first build a great self. So, how can you start applying these laws today? Here are 3 simple actions. First, take a moment to assess your 5 buckets: knowledge, skills, network, resources, and reputation. Where are you strongest? Where are you weakest? This week, make a conscious decision to invest in that first bucket. Read a chapter of a book, watch a documentary, or take a short online course in an area that interests you. Make a small deposit in your knowledge bucket. Second, conduct a pre-mortem on one of your most important goals. Grab a piece of paper and ask yourself that terrifyingly powerful question: imagine this has already failed. Why did it fail? Be brutally honest. Write down every possible reason. This isn't about being negative. It's about seeing the risks clearly so you can navigate around them. It's about prevention, not cure. And third, embrace the philosophy of Kaizen. Look at your daily routine, your work, or your health, and ask, what is one small, 1% improvement I can make today? Don't try to overhaul your entire life. Just find one tiny thing. Maybe it's drinking 1 extra glass of water. Maybe it's putting your phone away for the first 10 minutes of your workday. Small, easy choices, compounded over time, are what lead to extraordinary results. That was a summary of The Diary of a CEO by Steven Bartlett. We certainly touched on the big ideas today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. It can show you the major cities and the rivers, but it can never replace the experience of actually walking the streets, meeting the people, and breathing the air. The real magic happens when you read the book for yourself. It's in those quiet moments when a particular story or a simple phrase connects with you in a way you didn't see coming. This summary is here to help you decide if this is a journey worth taking. If anything we've talked about today has sparked something in you, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning, it's an experience that can genuinely shift the way you see yourself and the world around you. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you something to think about, please do me a small favor and hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next journey into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Your support helps us keep going, and it ensures we can continue growing and learning together.